You're watching CES Live, powered by Ustream.tv, the most powerful way to stream live video, and by NewTek, makers of the TriCaster family of broadcast and streaming systems. And now, CES Live.
Hey guys, I'm John P. Welcome back to our continuing coverage here at CES 2014, and with me, the lovely Georgia from iMore.
From iMore.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm glad to have you co-hosting. I'm glad to get rid of Renee because you're smarter, you're better looking, everything. Renee's standing over there ignoring me. That's okay. But you guys, thanks for joining us. We also have Ben joining us from Creative Strategies. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
We couldn't be doing any better.
Really?
Well, maybe if somebody dropped like a huge bag of money on the table, I don't know.
Yeah. We probably could be doing better, but no one really
This
wants
is not
to hear
the best way to start off the year, this show, so.
It is a lot of work. So tell us about your experience at the show. What are you up to, and how's it been going so far?
It's been going pretty good. I mean, our sort of output of this show is industry, wide perspective and commentary on what we see. So I'm here looking at the trends, meeting with companies that don't exist in the Silicon Valley, where I see it almost weekly. So meeting with a lot of Chinese companies, manufacturers from overseas, brands doing things in their markets and trying to learn more about what their plans are for each of these markets. So spending most of my time trying to find things that catch my eye, and we think the industry needs to understand why this is important for the technology sector, either in this year or for the years to come.
So your job is like a strategist. You take all of the information you have and tell people where it's going and how to get there, so you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah. My firm is a typical sort of industry analyst firm, very similar to your IDCs and Gartners, but we're much more boutique and we focus a lot more on the trends. So our goal is to say, not just why tablets are selling in bulk or why PCs are not, or why smartphones are doing well, but really why are those things happening? What are the market forces that are dictating what we see in consumer markets?
Which is so important.
Yeah, and it gets lost. I mean, I write a lot, so try to add more perspective to what gets happened in the media, but it is important, but often misunderstood. So
I've read a lot of your writing. I love the fact, because technology can really lose people, but it's not just that you understand technology, but you understand how to put it into a form so that the layperson will understand what's happening.
Yeah, and I think, my background is in research. I mean, I started in this industry at Cypress Semiconductor, so I was in semiconductor stuff. But my perspective as all of that was to get to the root, of why things are doing well. So it's great that we're seeing a bunch of connected health devices and sensors and wearables and smartwatches. But is there a reason that those exist? Will people want them? Why? What are the big picture applications for them? Those are all the kind of things that we do with all the different market segments that we track. So I hope to make it digestible, because I just don't want technical people reading my stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of these trends. I mean, we're at CES. It's 2014. What are, if you had to pick the big 2 or 3 that are going down right now, what are they?
Well, I mean, we constantly talk about this, this trend, the Internet of Everything. In the past few CESs, I think we've seen it come to life. What's different about this show, and one of the things that I try to encourage everybody to keep into perspective about these things, is that it's not necessarily the device that really matters, it's the data. So however I get that data is what matters to me. So it could be, something like a Fitbit, it could be something like, any other number of health monitors. But what you're seeing here at the show is that sensors are now being embedded into objects that you use every day. So if you look at, Sleep Number, they have a bed now, and they've launched Sleep IQ, which has 500 sensors in the mattress. And what it'll do is track your sleep, as well as your breathing patterns, your heart rate, restlessness, how many times you get out of bed, and your partners as well. And you'll get, via their companion app, all of that data. Now that, to me, is much better than wearing something that's trying to give me that same data. And so that's a perfect application of when sensors get embedded into things that we use. There's another company out there, 9450, showing a basketball with a sensor in it. And what it'll do is it'll analyze the arc of your ball. Nice. It'll also analyze the spin rotation and tell you where your shot either missed or made it on where it hit on the backboard. And so that's an example of how would I have known that right? With anything else. Even if I wore something, I wouldn't have had that data. And I'm a competitive tennis player in the Bay Area, and so Babolat actually has Hero Racket as well, along the same lines, where they've embedded a microchip into the handle. And what it's doing is telling you, it's analyzing every bit of your swing. It'll actually tell you where on the racket you hit the ball, and with how much power over time, as well as your spin percentage, whether it was a flat ball or a top spin. It'll analyze your first serve rotations versus your second. None of that stuff you could get with something that you wear or mount. It's only valuable, that much more valuable, because it's actually embedded into something that you care about or you use regularly.
That's really what we're talking about when we talk about this Internet of Things. You know what's funny? Like a while back, Callie and I were doing a presentation, and we were trying to explain what we kind of thought the future of this Internet of Things would be like. And one of the examples I gave was along the lines of what you're talking about, things you can't normally get information out of. I said, what about when you finally have a spoon that has a thermometer built into it, and you can stir a pot and it tells you what the temperature, and guess what? I saw a press release for this year. I saw a press release for a spoon with an embedded sensor.
They were watching.
I guess they were. I don't know.
I would need a spoon with a taser, so that if I ate too much, it just tased me.
Yeah.
And then I would put it down.
Slow it down a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's one big thing, is the Internet of Things. You mentioned also, you kind of alluded to like the bed and the health stuff. And I keep hearing people talking about health trends in consumer electronics. I don't really know. I don't really consider Fitbits to be health trends. I mean, is it really happening? What's going on with that?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a difference between somebody who just wants a general activity monitor, and again, this goes to my point that that's mildly interesting.
Yeah.
If you're a diabetic, or if you have heart disease, or if you're an athlete, you're buying very different products, because the reason you want that data is very different than I just need to know how many steps I've taken. And obviously, with the iPhone 5S, that tracks your steps, and so it's kind of like that's your wearable, right, for general stuff. But it starts to get really interesting, like I said, when you want deeper data, deeper context, and you're buying specialized devices that give you the output you want. And that's what we're seeing now with this show, and we're seeing much more specialized devices. So you look at this from an industry-wide opportunity, it's fantastic. I mean, we're going to we ship hundreds of millions of sensors every week into these devices. So this is billions of plus connected. In fact, our statistics were in 2025 we'll have 1 trillion connected devices.
Wow.
And so when you look at the scope and scale of that, you say, well, inevitably it does get embedded in everything. In fact, in 3 years, I'd be surprised if we're even really talking about the Internet of Things. It will just be the standard norm. In the same way that the Internet is, we don't talk about getting on the Internet anymore. Everything will be connected, and we will use all of these applications, in conjunction with whatever you plug in, your coffee pot, it'll all have an app.
Does that scare you?
There's something about having, so much technology that has tech and everything is watching you.
That's what I think Joey Tech says, too much meta. This is the same data NSA used to make predictive habits. Is that something we should be concerned about?
Well, and I think the thing that is absolutely true, I mean, this is the thing that I keep, trying to tell, folks in the industry, is that this is all wonderful, but what we're not talking about is security. Yeah. And while right now we're building the fundamentals of a connected ecosystem, I need to be able to manage my data, and more importantly, I need to be able to clarify who has access to that data and who does not. Now, if you're in Google's ecosystem, that might be a little bit more tricky, and other more vertical vendors, Microsoft, Apple, and perhaps others that might create some new flavor, they might be a little bit more controlling or give you the more control of that data, but the bottom line is we're not addressing security, and we have to for this to become where we want it to be. So that's one thing we talk about that's really unscathed at this point, but really needs to be addressed.
And they give us a little taste, and then we get hooked, and then we can't live without it.
Yeah.
We become dependent.
They kind of buy your silence, don't they? They're like, what can we give them to make them just let us have access to everything?
Exactly, and you love it. You love it. I don't know what I would do without my phone. It would be really difficult.
Yep, true.
Interesting. Any other huge ongoing trends that we should be expecting?
We're tracking 4K. I mean, 4K is clearly a legitimate opportunity. In fact, one of the things that's really interesting is if you look at the sales of TVs over the past, this past holiday, 60-inch TVs and above are actually a growth sector. Now, you don't normally think that 60-inch and above is a growth sector, but we are seeing now bigger TVs, giving people a reason to upgrade, and over time, I think 4K is going to play a big role in that. So while 4K is not going to be huge this year, I mean, we're not forecasting monster units for 4K in the United States. It's actually bigger in China, but we think 2015 starts to really turn the page for 4K. And then obviously, there's other bits about that. Curved displays are starting to get interesting. I mean, one of the things about curved displays that I think people are missed is if you're staring at a flat display and a curved display at the same time, you actually get a lot more crisp picture from more viewing angles of curved than you do flat. There's also less glare. So there are some value propositions for that. Again, the technology has to mature, and the prices are too high. But those cost curves will come down dramatically. So I think over the next few years, 4K is going to be a continual story that you'll hear, and it's an important one. It's a growth sector for the industry, and it's one that we want as the consumer electronics industry to be solid.
I wonder about two things when it comes to 4K. Number one is the delivery, the transmission of the data, because it takes 4 times bandwidth, or maybe 3 with compression or something, but it takes a lot to deliver it. And number two, and I don't know, this may be completely off the wall, but I've already seen 8K TVs.
Oh, yeah.
And they're amazing. And I keep thinking, well, we haven't even fully adopted 4K yet, but is there some chance we might skip it and just go right to 8K or something?
Well, I think the fundamentals of the broadcast industry, again, have to evolve. And if we went from 8K, we just don't have the infrastructure to do that. So whereas HD...
But we don't even have the infrastructure right now for 4K, so why the hell not just skip it and go to 8?
The key to the stepping stone from going from analog to digital was step 1 for digital broadcast, which we're in now, and some programs are 720, some are 1080. And so now we're moving toward 4K, and we're getting the codec in place now that can broadcast that broadly. So the industry just moves in these directions.
It almost seems though that the TVs are getting so crisp that they make like real life look fake. There's a certain point where that's good enough.
And I wonder what that'll be. I mean, again, you look at 4K. I think is a big step forward, right? Everybody's branding it Ultra HD. 8K, while it looks great, that's a pretty big stream.
There's too much detail. I don't want to see that much detail.
Cool. Well, speaking of detail, this is a lot of great detail. Thank you so much for coming to join us. It's really interesting stuff. By the way, where can people get more? Because, I know there are people who want more detail.
So I'm a tech columnist for Time, so I write at Time. I have my own site, Tech Opinions, that's more kind of industry, big picture, commentary, opinions. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Ben Beharan.
Nice.
Wonderful.
All right, thank you very much.
My pleasure, thank you.
You guys, thank you for sticking around for our live continuing coverage here at CES. We're going to keep on going. We got more interviews to come, and stay tuned. Be right back.